Okay, moving on, what we have here is we have composite shapes. And so composite shapes are kind of complicated shapes that we're going to break down into smaller, easier to understand shapes. So I want you to look at this, and I want you to look at this first problem and see how would you kind of divide that up into maybe two rectangles. Well, you could do it one of two ways. You could look at it and say, oh, I see a rectangle on the top and a rectangle on the bottom. That's one way to do it. Maybe you immediately saw, let me get rid of that. You immediately said, well, I don't see it that way. I see it more as a rectangle on the left and a rectangle on the right. In this particular problem, it really, truly doesn't matter. I'm going to start with this way. And so I'm going to do the area first. I know that that's a little bit difficult to understand, but I'm going to try the area first. So when I look at this area, remember I'm dividing it up into rectangles. So if this top is 6 inches, this piece down here is also 6 inches. Well, let's think about this. If this segment over here is 8 inches, and this segment is 5 inches, well, that means that this segment is also 5 inches. So now think about that. That means that from here to here, this segment is also 5 inches. So if the whole right-hand side is 8 inches, how long is this piece right here? Well, that's got to be 3 inches. Now, let's look at the bottom. The entire bottom is 12 inches. Well, this much of it is 6 inches. So that means this much here has to be 6 inches as well. Well, if that piece is 6 inches, then that means this piece up here has to be 6 inches as well. So I lied a little bit. I said I was going to do the area first, but I'm not. I'm going to do the perimeter. So remember how we talked about perimeter, is we're going to pick a corner. Any corner will do. And we're just going to take a walk along the edge. Well, how long is that piece? That piece right there is 12 inches. And then I'm going to go up this right-hand side. And how long is that? That's 8 inches. So I'm just going to add up each side. This top piece is 6 inches. This piece right here is 3 inches. This piece right here is 6 inches. And this piece right here is 5 inches. So I've completed a walk along the entire edge. 12 plus 8 plus 6 plus 3 plus 6 plus 5. When I add them all up, let's see, 12 plus 8 is 20, 26, 29, 35, that is 40. And remember, perimeter is just measured in regular old units. Now the area. You can do this any way that you want. I'm going to start with kind of dividing it into a left and right rectangle. So as I have it. So I have rectangle number 1 on the left, and I'm going to add to that the area of rectangle number 2. Well, rectangle number 1 looks to be a 6 by 5 inch rectangle. And where I'm getting that is 6 times 5. The other rectangle, the left-hand rectangle, I'm going to add to that. And if I look at the dimensions there, it's this 6 times 8. And so what I get is I get 30 plus 48, and that equals 78. And remember, I'm going to measure my area in inches squared. All right, now let's just suppose that you happen to have recognized this and you said, well, I'm going to start all over and I'm going to show this again. And you said, well, I didn't see it this way. I didn't divide it into a left and right rectangle. I divided it into a top and bottom rectangle. So remember, So either of these ways is fine if you divided it into this top rectangle and this bottom rectangle. Well, if I look at this bottom rectangle, well, I'll call this rectangle number 1 and rectangle number 2. So doing it this different way, the area would still be rectangle number 1 plus rectangle number 2. Well, rectangle number 1, remember we said that this segment over here was 3 inches because this was 5 inches. So rectangle number 1, the dimensions are 6 by 3. And I'm going to add to that rectangle number 2, which is 12 by 5. Well, look at this. 6 times 3, that's 18. 12 by 5, that's 60. Doing it this way, we still get 78 inches squared. Both are totally acceptable ways of doing this. So there's 2 other problems on this page, and what I'm going to suggest is that you press pause right now and you figure out what is the perimeter and the area of each irregular shape. All right, for this first one, to find the perimeter, what I did is I took a walk along the edge and I figured out that this was 7 plus 2 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 4 plus 7 plus 3. And that works out to be 38 meters. To find the area, what I did is I divided this into rectangle number 1, which has dimensions of 7 times 3, and rectangle number 2, which has dimensions of 5 times 5. And I added 21 plus 25 to get 46 meters squared. Second one was a little bit different, and what I want you to notice about the second one is I'm only asking for the area. And do you see how it's this big rectangle? But rather than, and there's a small rectangle, but rather than adding the 2 together, what I'm doing is I am taking the area of the big rectangle and I'm subtracting the area of the small rectangle. Just imagine if this was like a wall that you had to paint. Well, you would have to paint the entire big rectangle, but then you wouldn't have to paint that white spot. So you'd be subtracting that small rectangle from it. So the dimensions of the big rectangle were 12 by 8, and I subtracted from that 3 by 4. So it's 96 minus 12, or 84 meters squared. So, guys, I hope you have a great day, and I hope you have a fantastic spring break. Please do finish all 3 things. Remember, on